Commissioners, I'll remind you that over the last 6 to 8 months, we've been using the board meetings as an opportunity to update you on each of the systems. Today is our final update on the systems, and it's electric today. We have Paul Randolph and Gabe Bolus that will prepare and deliver that presentation, but I think it's interesting. They also have some gadgets they're going to do show and tell at some point. So I thank them for being here, and I know you'll enjoy this presentation.
Anytime you invite a couple of engineers to come and give a presentation, Beth knows you're going to get maps, pictures, and stuff. So Gabe was generous enough to dig up a couple of pieces of equipment that we want to share with you a little bit later, but hopefully it won't be too distracting to sit here as I go through a couple of opening comments. As Ms. Roach introduced, this is the electric overall presentation system. We heard last month about water, and then last fall it was the gas and wastewater systems. Our customers have high expectations for all KUB services, and on the electric side it's about safe and reliable delivery of electric service. When they turn the light switch on, they want the lights to come on. So we're all about reliability. And we do that with in part with sound O&M or operation and maintenance programs and capital programs as well. So the agenda for our report will go as outlined here. I'm going to give a little overview. This is the map I talked about. I'll give you a little quick review of the electric system itself. Talk about some of the key components that are in our Century 2 capital program. I'll finish with a review of some of the O&M, our operation and maintenance programs as well. Gabe's going to take the presentation then and talk about how we put all of those together, how do we coordinate that into projects and make the work happen. To give a quick look ahead to 2021, what's the system going to look like? If you recall, we started the Century 2 in 2011, so that's the 10-year outlook. And then finish with a few comments about reliability. The electric system is throughout parts of 7 counties, as you can see on this map. And let me point out a few of the features that you have here. One is that I think is a key feature, of course, is the 8 in-feed substations. And these are points where we take delivery of power from TVA. Now we place that power on top of the 69 kV or transmission system that distributes around the 7-county area, and they deliver that through 250 plus miles of wire to the distribution substations. And there's 58 of those, so that gives us a total of 66 stations on our system. And from those distribution substations, we go out to another 4,000 miles of overhead wire that delivers the service to the customer themselves. Another component of the distribution system is about 1,000 miles of underground pipe, and that's important because we have a program in place to upgrade that underground, some of that underground cable. For Century 2 capital components, this is certainly not all of the different components in the electric system. The electric system is, in my view, the most complex system that we have for utility service, but it does represent some key features that have a great deal to do with the customer reliability. And programs we have in place to address substation transformers, of which we have 153 in those 66 substations that we just mentioned. We have a pole replacement program, XLP, cross-link polyethylene cable. And also I want to talk a little bit about the downtown network vault program as well. The substation transformers take the power from the 69 kV system, reduce that, and place that upon the local distribution system. And this program was all focused on contingency, which is, in essence, the backup capacity in a station to help support other stations if need be, or other customers along the line. So we had this comprehensive review of all of our substation transformers back in 2008, and from that program, we identified 17 high-priority transformers that we felt we could do work there to improve with the capacity in those stations and the support of the surrounding substations themselves. Now, that work has been complete. We finished that in 2013, and at that point, we undertook another review of the substation transformers. We identified another 13 transformers that are in the current proposed 5-year plan that we'll be addressing as well. If you look at this, we want to get the pointer here, a few features on this station. This is the Carnes substation, and this transformer in the forefront is the new transformer, and this was transformer number 1. That's the old transformer. I think this station was put into play probably in the 60s. The new transformer increases the capacity of this station to help with the growth primarily in the community to the short northwest part of our system. You'll see a few features here I want to point out. We call this the front of the station. You'll see some of the controls down here, but you'll notice on the back these are fans, and they are attached to some fins on the back, and that has to do with cooling of the foil and such. Power comes in through the 69 into these bushings here, and then out to the distribution through these at this point. Again, this is in the Carnes area. Another program that is well underway now is the pole replacement program. That 4,000 miles of overhead distribution and 250 miles of transmission is on top of about 135,000 wood poles in the system. So we started a program in FY11 to increase the pole replacement program from historical levels of about 1,000 to 1,300 poles a year to 2,600, or as demonstrated here, it's a 10-year program at 26,000 poles. So that means we'll get through the system in about 50 years. It's a 50-year pole life. We've experienced some good results on the inspection of our distribution poles, and we think that's an achievable target for us. So this program is well underway. You can see we're a little bit ahead of the program right now, but we have some expenditures in the coming years that will bring this back into line, and we are expecting to hit the target in the 10 years. I talked a little bit about the XLP cable, the cross-linked polyethylene, and one thing you need to know about it, it's been in place since the 60s, and we quit using that probably in the early 80s. The cable itself, because of the material it's made of, the insulated material, has become brittle in some respects, so that affects the insulating capability, which results in cable failures and faults. Another contributing factor is this cable is direct burial. The cable we use today, we put it in conduits. We sleeve it through a PVC conduit or polyethylene conduit, and it adds protection. This has been a very successful program. If you look over here, the FY08, we were experiencing about 40 failures a year on 140 miles of cable. Through the replacement efforts today, we're running about 67 miles of cable left in the system, and this year to date for FY14, we've had 3 cable failures. That's a direct impact on reliability for the customers. So that program's on track, doing well, and our customers are benefiting from that replacement effort. Here's another program that has rolled into the Century 2. We actually began back in '06. It was an 8-year program. It'll be completed this fiscal year. The only remaining work right now is to coordinate an outage with the customer to make sure we closer, you can see one in this picture. This is the same transformer being installed in 61 that we took out in '09. This is in the 100 block of Gay Street. Part of that project was the removal of this. Now, the next step, as we complete this, we're going to go back now and assess other components of the network, which are the manholes, the conduits themselves, etc. And I just found out recently that some of those manholes might be as old as 1919. If you go back to 1919, the old Knoxville Railway and Light Company had a DC circuit down Gay Street from Hill Avenue to Jackson Avenue that provided power to, they call subway, but a streetcar and lights. So all of those electrical components are now been replaced, but the structures themselves, there may be as many as 30 manholes down Gay Street that were installed in the 1910 vintage area. So this assessment is important to us as we roll this program into Century 2. We're moving away from the vaults themselves and the equipment you find in the vaults. We're moving out into the manholes. We'll be reviewing the conduit itself. And then from that, prioritizing repairs, replacements, new cable, maybe even some new cable routes that might be necessary. But a very good program coming to closure. Those were capital programs, but there's some other programs that we have that are vital to the delivery of power to the customers. And some of these you're familiar with, some are very visible and some are not. But one very visible program, of course, is vegetation management. I'll talk a little bit about that. We've got the substation cap and pin, which actually happens to be what these insulators are that you see here on the desk. We have some lower cost programs, but very important programs in the thermography program, where we go out and look for abnormal operating conditions, and then a switch inspection and maintenance program that you might relate that somewhat to what the water and the gas does with valve maintenance programs we reviewed already. Vegetation management, of course, it's highly visible and it does have a direct impact on customers. We're very sensitive to the customers' trees, and we have a lot of respect for the trees, but we also have the obligation to provide safe and reliable power, and this is all about making sure we meet both of those needs. And we do that over about 1,200 miles of pruning a year, and the cycle, it means that we cycle the system, and every 3 to 4 years we go through the system. We have been a Treeline USA utility since 2001, and of course we prune lateral pruning method as recommended by the Arbor Day Foundation. With help from a community-based tree trim policy review panel in 2010, we refined our program, focusing a lot on communication and trying to respect the trees, provide the best balance there. If there is a issue with the customer has the ability to go through a new component of our program, the customer advocacy program. So we have somebody to review all of the concerns at that level if we can't resolve that in the field with the forester or the crew themselves. And anytime we go through that through the advocate, we take those results from those discussions, we go back and we look at our program and see if there's opportunities for improvement there. So we are continuously improving the program. I mentioned the substation cap and pin insulators. You see insulators on the transmission poles themselves, and that's where the wire hangs down below the structure, and you'll see these insulators hanging there. And that's a little bit different than what you see when you go to a substation, and we refer to these as cap and pin, because these are not only providing insulation between different components on the structure, they are part of the structure. So they are, in many cases, going to be a 69 insulator where there was a failure, or maybe there was a crack developed, moisture got in there, changes in temperatures, this falls away, it actually might fly away, and we run the risk of this damaging other parts of the substation when they fail. Here's a component, and you'll notice this looks a little bit bigger than this one does because this is for a 13 kV. If we carried in here one for the 69 kV, it would be 3 times as tall and about 100 pounds, and Gabe nor I had the back for that job today. But you're welcome to come by and pick one of these up if you'd like. These are 10 to 15 pounds or something like that. But the 69 you'll see here, you can see he's actually standing on one of the structures right there. These are the older components. They're probably 50 to 60 years old. That's older technology. And Gabe did bring us a sample of the newer technology, and you can see that, yes, it's still a stress member, but the insulating, the porcelain component is one unit versus these are separate units. There's just some advantages of newer technology. So we're going through the system today, replacing that, and even in this small picture, you can see there's a lot of those in there. Well, there is. There's about 300 to 400 in each of the substations.
Can you hold that other one up?
Yeah. We'll just go ahead and sit down there.
Yeah. You can see this actually had a failure already.
Okay.
And this is, and you see they're exactly the same height, same, because you can't move the substation, so we had to put them in the same spots, literally.
So are we doing a maintenance and going out and actually seeing which ones are failed, or we're just changing them all
Yeah,
out?
we have about 30 substations with these cap and pin insulators today, and they are to be replaced. And that's, at this rate, it's a 10-year program to get to remove those from the system. And like I said, Gabe's going to spend a little bit of time here in a minute talking about how do we blend together cap and pins, transformers. We got a couple slides on switches and some thermography. How do we get all that together? Gabe's going to spend a little bit of time kind of walking through how to build these individual programs into actually something that we can accomplish.
So I have another question. So do we think that the life of that one, or does it operate better, or we're just changing out, this is new technology?
Well, as an engineer, when you look at that, you look at how this right here is a single component. If you reach in here, this is not, these are individuals in the old style, so there's a metal component, a place for moisture to collect, for temperatures to have an effect. This design has been improved, and this is the latest engineered product.
Commissioner, but in terms of looking at their useful life, all of those are at the age that they need to be replaced. And if you're going to replace one, you replace them all. You don't go in there piecemeal in the substation.
So
You
have
take
to
the whole
actually replace
substation.
Yeah, you would not get all the advantages because of, if this one failed and it was next to this one, it's a high probability it would damage it.
The other one, okay.
So you wouldn't want to put something in there that you had less confidence in. If you could, while you're there to replace it, we're replacing those. I don't see anything else on there, but here's the remnants of one of them out here. So when they come apart, they come apart. I mentioned thermography or the infrared camera use that we have. Talk a little bit about this situation, this substation right here. I mentioned earlier about the picture of the back of the substation at Carnes. Well, this is the back of the substation at UT. And this substation provides power to about half of the main campus, but it also provides power to about half of what Kauai wastewater plant is selling. So a critical station and a critical transformer. Now, we have an annual program to go by and use this infrared camera to look around. We look at switches, we look at all the different equipment on there, and we noticed that on this case that these fins over here that are used to pump oil out of the transformer, they go through the fins, it's kind of like a radiator on the car, and the fan blows on that, it cools the oil, and brings it back into the transformer and keeps the transformer operating at the appropriate temperature. And you can see right here in this picture, that fin should be hot, but it's cold. it's cold, that means that that oil is not moving about, and you can see this white level right there, that means the temperatures are quite high. Now, there are some safety devices built in. There's a high temperature alarm, and there's other alarms there, but if those were to fail, and this substation failed, that substation, that transformer is $700,000. So you don't want, those are high dollars, not only an outage. If this station, the safety devices did work, we would still have an electrical outage. It would shut down, and UT would be off, we would be off of Kauai. But if the other safety devices did not work, we were facing, a catastrophic failure here. But you can see, once the corrections were made, the oil is coming in at the top, it's being cooled by the fans, and it's being redistributed back through the transformer. So this is a good find for a program that's, I think the earlier side, I guess, a $35,000 a year type program. We get around the system and look at all these components. The last program that I wanted to talk to you about is the switch inspection and maintenance program. Now, these are 69 kV. These are the big switches on the transmission lines and at the substations themselves. And you can see the arm of that switch right there. And you'll notice there's one of those 3-foot tall 69 kV cap and pin insulators that's sitting on top of it. It's a structural element. But you have to have that separation so there's no current would want to jump from this device when closed down into the structure itself. A 10-year program again, there's about 700 switches on the system, so we're going to try to get about 70 switches a year. They are inspecting, as he's doing here, but they'll also lubricate that with a graphite lubricant. They'll operate it and make any adjustments to make sure that when we come out there and we need to use that switch, it's going to function properly. So this is a preventive maintenance program, of course. So that's kind of concludes what I've got on the programs. Do you have any questions before I turn it over to Gabe? Yes.
On your tree trim, we're trimming about 1,200 miles a year. And I'm going to make the assumption since 2001, most every customer's been trimmed 2 or 3 times. Is that reasonable?
That's true.
Have we found, since we went through the gyrations, I'll call them, that we went through with the tree trim panel and all, have we found that people are more accepting? I mean, they've seen what's going to happen with their trees now at least twice or 3 times, and we're not generally doing more than we would have done for prior times. Is that reasonable?
I would say in the last cycle, maybe the last 2, since our review panels, results of the system review panel, and they came up with some recommendations to make sure they supported the lateral pruning method. We are much more consistent with our program today than we were in 2001. I think the customers recognize that it's a maintenance program that we are going to continue to perform. As you would imagine, that some of the larger limbs and encroachments of the past have been removed, so there may be smaller encroachments as sprouting occurs where cuts were made 4 years ago, but sometimes those can be very dense as well. But I think generally speaking, we have a good rapport with the customers, and the program is a good program.
Let me add to that from a customer consternation perspective. My office is the one that used to get a whole lot of those calls, and I will tell you that the program has really evolved since 2001. Used to, when a customer became very upset, we might avoid the trim for a while or minimally trim. But after the tree trim policy review panel, we made a commitment to the community, to the customers, and to our system that we would be disciplined about trimming what we needed for the system. But we had the advantage of educating the community about why we were doing it. And so I would tell you that while we do have incidental customers who need more help, hand-holding than some other customers, in general, the community's more informed, they understand, and they accept it better. Secondly, we added staff to that unit. We added 3 foresters to go out and meet individually with customers. And so when they may have an initial rejection of a trim, ultimately, with the help of those professionals, they're able to understand, and we're able to achieve our trim at the same time with better customer satisfaction. So I do believe that the policy, the tree trim panel helped us develop a really good policy, and we have implemented what they said, and I believe, as in Paul's slide, we have increased the customer satisfaction because of it. It's just a better program today than it used to be.
I just know from a customer perspective, from just my own personal perspective, I've observed that I have better service as a result of the tree trimming that's taken place. And I don't know if there's been any kind of data compiled, sort of system-wide, but.
I'm getting ready to see it.
Yeah, good segue.
All right. Good.
Thank you very much. Paul described a bunch of programs on the capital and O&M. What I want to spend the next few slides is describing how we make that happen, because these are not individual by themselves programs. They are a lot of coordination, a lot of planning goes on. I kind of want to show an example of a station we've done where we combined a bunch of these programs into one to make it more efficient for our customers. Same map that Paul used earlier, except I've overlaid with some colors. The green is showing circuits and substations we have finished. They were in the previous 5-year plan under the Century 2 model, and they're done. The yellow is what's coming up in the next few years. And what makes this map unique is what you can't do is you can't have, let's say, SP and EV, which are straw plains and East Ridge. You can't have them both out simultaneously. You have to have one on supporting the other while he's being worked on. So we have to do a lot of work, and beyond that, you can't have the line between them out. So it's all about coordinating these efforts and doing them in a strategic way to minimize the reliability impact on them and to get the work done. So I want to describe an example of a substation we did, and I zoomed in there. It's our Ramsey substation, RA, located just east of downtown, south of the I-40 above the river. It serves a mostly residential area, but does quite a large area. It's backed up by forks of the river, what we call our Trentville substations. So this past year, we actually replaced a lot of the materials in that station, modernized it, made it new, and had it out of service for about 3 months. What's planned in the next few years is to replace all the lines that feed in and out of that. So we had to get the station done first, and one at a time, take each of these lines out of service and replace those. Here's a picture of the finished product. Now it's just a substation, I understand. There's a lot of things we did in this substation that make it exciting for me. And I'll go through them. There were actually 10 different programs done this one station when I was out for about 11 weeks. First of all, we installed new switches. All these poles have new switches that allow us to operate and maintain the system reliability. Number 2, we replaced, I guess I'll do that. Number 2 was new poles. Those are brand new poles. Those are ductile iron poles, not wood. We hope they'll last 75 to 80 years, much longer than our wood poles today. I'll give it a pause here a second. 3, we installed animal guards. What are animal guards? Those are basically devices that allow squirrels, raccoons, possums who love our substations to climb around on our gear and cause an outage. So that's been a big added to our substation program. We thermographed the transformer. It was in good shape. It was fairly new. So we just did our usual maintenance on it, looked at it. It's great. Put it back in service when we're finished. So it stayed in place. 5, we actually upgraded some of the materials inside that control house. That house actually runs the substation. So they're brand new relays. We put in new fiber optics, which are a much better communication tool, and allowed us to upgrade that the inside of that substation. 6, those are brand new breakers. Breakers are the protective devices, like in your house, your breaker box. This is the breaker for the substation. Those are brand new. Those had been aged and were of the older type, so we replaced those with brand new breakers. 7, we replaced the 13 kV, the old brown ones, the new gray ones. Those have been replaced all throughout the station. Probably about 200 of those in that station. I'm just pointing at a couple of them there. We also replaced the switches. The switches had gotten to the point where they were hard to operate, weren't doing their job, so we replaced all the switches over there. We also replaced the 69 kV ones, the ones I couldn't carry. Those have been replaced on top of the station, so those captive pins are now replaced with brand new ones. And then finally, number 10, we actually tree trimmed the area. So that when we left the area, basically this station's been modernized and back to normal. My plans are to replace it in another 50 years, in theory. But we'll do maintenance on it every year. We'll do thermography on it every year and just keep checking it. But idea is to keep it running as long as we can with minimal replacement going forward. So what do we hope to achieve in our 10-year Century 2 plan? Paul mentioned 26,000 poles to replace. That's about 20% of our system, a 50-year program. All the cross-linked polyethylene cable will be gone and replaced with new EPR cable. 92% of our substations, and when I say modernized, it's basically changing these out for these. Doesn't necessarily mean a transformer is being changed out. It could. Most of the cases, it's just the parts that serve the substation. 60% of the 69 kV system will be modernized, new poles, new wires, new fiber optics, because fiber optics are the way to go. Think of dial-up versus your high-speed internet. What we have now is kind of dial-up with some of the old stations. With new technologies, new improvements, we want to be able to monitor, control, and operate our system at a higher speed, more feedback, more real-time data. So all the stations will be linked by fiber by 2021. And as you mentioned, reliability. In 2005, this board set a metric for us. And it started at 4.58 hours, an average customer is out of power. And each year we've been asked to improve that over the last 8 years. And so the bar now is at 2.2 hours. The two colors represented up here are the light blue is what we call our storm, the IEEE storms. We refer to them as major events. As you'll see in 2011, we can't make the chart big enough. That's when we had the April and June storms that were just unbelievable. What we try to control though is the dark blue. That's what we call a blue sky event. Today, beautiful day, sunny, 65 degrees. We don't want to have outages on days like these at all. So we measure ourselves against that. And as you see, we have achieved or exceeded those up to this point, and we're continuing to drive that number down to our average customer. Go into what you were saying about the you see improved reliability. We are seeing it also in our numbers. Here's what our customers see. This is a picture from February. Here's what our customers see. Beautiful shot in our area. Here's what we see. We see trees lean over and lean into our lines. The last 2 months have been a very challenging 2 months. I came to the board in January and talked about the extreme cold weather. Added in February the heavy snow and the high winds. Our system has responded very well. I mean, compared to similar years in past years, similar events in past years, much better. We've had some small events occur, but they were very small in nature, and we're back on pretty quick. So we feel like we're making progress in the right steps to improve reliability for our customers. So how are we doing this year so far? Our goal is to be below 2.2 hours by the end of June. Right now, we're ahead of schedule. We're ahead of target. We're doing better than our target. We've gone through the hard months of January and February. Obviously, the spring storms that possibly can pop up and events like that. But right now, we're tracking underneath that red line, and that's our goal is to be below that at the end of this year. In summary, the KU electric system is very strong. We continue to look at it and model it. We review it every 5 years to make sure we're looking at the highest priority things. Everything we do is driven by the system needs and system planning of our reliability to drive those numbers to minimal amount of outages. And ultimately, everything we do is about reliability and safety of our product. So whether it be an O&M program or a capital program, our goal is to be safe and reliable to our customers. As I could put it, I want us to be taken for granted that the lights always be on, ultimately. Any questions?
I have one, and we ask it every year, so I'm going to ask it. It's the wood pole replacement program, the ductile iron poles. I think we had come to the conclusion it's just not cost effective to change the wood out to the other.
Not in every location.
Not in every
We do it
Yeah.
strategically.
Yeah, the
Okay.
substations, yes,
Yeah.
because it's such a critical structure. But
Okay.
most poles are going back wood for wood because of the cost. But major lines like a substation or one that has multiple circuits on it, like what I call busy pole, we do put those as ductile iron because it's just so hard to clear that much power off the system, and
So
we don't
we
want
are
to.
changing those over
Mhm.
when we need to.
Yes.
And those last 30 years long?
Oh, no, yeah, about 30 years longer.
30 years longer.
We're hoping, we're expecting it to last longer, but at least 30 years longer. And on the transmission side, instead of going back with wood, we're going back with steel, because the transmission system is so critical to our backbone. We're actually replacing those with steel poles, much lighter than wood actually, that handles.
And I want to conclude with just a thank you to the board. We've had 3 years of Century 2. You can see what we're doing with the money that you all allocated through rates. And I know it's very difficult to consider rate increases for customers, but KUB is planning ahead, and we're replacing our aging infrastructure, and we're doing it prudently and respectful of rates. but we're not going to have system failures because we're doing this, whereas some others who aren't doing this, systems will fail. So we very much appreciate the board's support of Century 2, your funding of Century 2, and we want you to know that it's going right into the system, and you can see the improvements that our customers will have because of it. So for that, we thank you for your commitment to KUB and the customers in the community.
Well, I think just what happened last winter is incredible, what y'all have been able really to accomplish. Because we had some pretty major
did.
events
Absolutely.
that had very little consequence.
We did.
And I think it's just incredible. Y'all ought to be proud, because it's showing up. We need to toot that horn a little bit.
I've got an idea on that. We'll talk to you later about it.
As far as it been so cold, Project Help, do we still have money in there? Did we use that? Or
Yes, we do. We have not depleted our funds. In fact, we talked to CAC about 2 weeks ago about relaxing some of the guidelines to be able to give out a little more because of this winter's significant cold weather, because we have some funds to do it with. And so we're working very well with them on that.